Greetings and salutations, all you wonderful pals and gals. This is John from Narcotic Casserole, and for this edition of the Doctor Who review, we're going to try something a little bit differently. It's something I've always wanted to try, fan commentaries. So the idea is you can put this video on your YouTube, on your phone, or on your laptop, and you can play this alongside your television as you watch whatever it is we're watching. So for today, we are watching Rose, the first episode of the new series. Now, the reason why we're doing this one, because again, continuing on from my upbringing as a Doctor Who fan, naturally, this was the very first episode I watched in eager anticipation of the second coming of my favorite television show. So, the way this is going to work, of course, as I said, have this video playing on your phone or your laptop, something not your television, and cue it up on your television, either via your streaming service or via a, I don't know, DVD. Yes, you know, DVDs, those still exist. I'm watching it on DVD. You know, physical media forever, baby. So, I'm going to give you time to get that queued up, though, if just in case you haven't already, and also just in case streaming services are still doing those commercials beforehand. Once you get to a point when you can pause it, I will cue you to start. So hopefully you guys have already gotten ready, or you paused my goings on just to make sure you get queued up on that. So I'm going to take it on faith that we are about to start. And at the conclusion of this, if you like this and feel that I should do some more, go ahead and comment below, and naturally like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. So I have the DVD set on the episode selection, and I'm about to press Rose. So, 3, 2, 1, go. And here we go. The Doctor Who theme blaring, the theme remastered by Murray Gold, and I believe the conductor was Ben Foster. The opening credit sequence is, of course, for, again, a classic series fan jumping back in, I was just overjoyed. Though I admit, seeing the names over the credits, that was a bit jarring, because honestly, I still prefer the face in the credits. I still think that's cooler. So anyway, Russell T Davies was the man to bring the show back, along with producer Phil Collinson and Julia Gardner. And Russell T Davies, I didn't know him at the time because he was more prominent over in Britain. The only thing I could have remotely known him for was the show Queer as Folk, which, well, he created the original British version, and it was remade in an American version, which was pretty successful over here as well. But one thing I did not know is that he was a rabid Doctor Who fan, and in production of the show brought along a lot of seasoned television writers who were also Doctor Who fans. So they were taking the resurrection of a time-honored British television staple very seriously, and we're glad they did. So, and there was a lot of trepidation, naturally, because the show kind of ended with the BBC kind of treating it like it was kind of a joke. I mean, of course, legendarily, Michael Grade did whatever he could to sabotage the show, to try and give it a good excuse to cancel it, having attempted to cancel it once before. Now, but of course, there was always the faithful who never wanted it to go away. Of course, I myself jumped on board with the TV movie back in '96. But the TV movie, I'm willing to acquiesce, had a lot of issues. One of them being that maybe it was a wise idea not to throw the uninitiated into the deep end. Now, as good as it is to assure the fans of old that you are trying to continue the story on, problem is they're not the only ones you need to appeal to in order to get your numbers up. And that is where Rose works a heck of a lot better as the premiere of a new series, because Russell T Davies very clearly understood where they went so right with An Unearthly Child, because that first episode is told through the perspective of Ian and Barbara, who have no idea what they're getting into, and this episode does the exact same thing, introduces a uninitiated person into the world of the Doctor. Rose effectively operates as an audience surrogate for this first story, and as a virtue of just really good pacing when it comes to writing, Russell T Davies is able to give us everything we need to know at that moment about Rose within the first minute and a half, and done with a montage. You know, we get it that Rose has a very standard existence. 19 years old, works in a shop, pretty much like a lot of people at that age. And then her life very unexpectedly takes a turn. And I like the fact that it's just a random turn. It's not like, things were leading her to this moment. There's no prophecy, nothing, just a girl goes down to do the closing duties for her work and then stumbles upon something vastly more extraordinary. Now, I say extraordinary because, but yet the fascinating thing, and it was a very smart, once again, a very smart move on Russell T Davies' part for this first episode, because yes, on one side you do want to cater to new audiences, which is very important, because because after all, the new is meant to cater to this generation who are going to carry it on in the future. But at the same time, though, if you want the classic fans to come back, you got to throw them a bone every now and then. And it was a very smart move on Russell Davies' part for the first episode to have the main menace be a classic monster. And fortunately, in the 26-year history of the original series, there were a lot of one-shot or even sometimes two-shot monsters who don't really have a very big legacy that he could choose from. And given the fact that he's setting up Rose as a girl who works in a shop, well, what better thing to lead her into this world than shop window dummies? And I will definitely say one of the few monsters from Doctor Who, which I'll still maintain, even in the classic series, is terrifying to this very day, are the Autons, or the Nestine Consciousness, as we know. See, look at that. That's, even I admit, the first time I saw this, I was like, yep, they're still freaky. I admit, and I suppose I'm biased on that front because I also find mannequins to be legitimately terrifying. Because I suppose it's just the blank stare and just the fact that they're just standing there. And, if you just see someone standing there staring back at you, that's just eerie. And, I suppose they didn't want to go overboard, because I will say, if they use those mannequins with those big mouths open agape, they're like, ah! Jeez, that's terrifying. And and to its credit, I would never want to be. I've seen how deadly the Autons can be in the classic series, but even just this alone, it's like, I would never want to be in the same room with them. Yep. Now, Eccleston, it just goes to show, all he had to do to prove to us he's the Doctor was take a hand, say run, and then run. And yeah, I was immediately sold the second he did that. I was like, yep, Doctor's back. Everything that happens afterwards, I'm totally okay with. And in the lead-in to the new series, it was announced that it was coming back in 2003. I think some point around the time they were doing the Scream of the Shalka animated webcast. And with every bit of information that was coming out, there was talks about a lot of things coming in. And of course, there were people going, oh, why are you bringing that back? Oh, so cheesy, at the time when no one really knew how the show was being made. So it was a really good move. It was a very smart move to cast an actor of considerable prestige. Someone that, at the minute you find out they're involved, you're like, okay, they're classing it up. That means they're going to do something a bit more. Now, my calendar's a bit off, but I remember around this point, the remake of Battlestar Galactica came out, and one of the things that they did on that show was they were able to take the best of that show and get rid of the silliness of the show and create, something new to, point out the best bits of it. And I feel that that's what they accomplished here with Doctor Who. They were able to up the production value and have real actors not from pantomime or the theater, like actual actors with film experience, and Eccleston was definitely a big get. Prior to this, I knew about him, but the only movie I saw him in was The Others, and that was kind of a bit role. I remember I remember he was in 28 Days Later, but he wasn't the thing that stood out about that movie. But I just knew he was a good actor, pure and simple. So the fact that they got him was great. I remember seeing the promo shots when they were in production, and I saw him in the leather jacket. And again, being a classic series fan and used to doctors very eccentrically dressed in Edwardian garb, of course, I was taken aback to see here's a doctor dressed very ordinarily in a leather jacket and a jumper. Yeah, it's a typical day, going to work, meet the boyfriend for lunch, and then your shop gets blown up. Yeah. Another reason why I'd say introducing the Autons into the proceedings was great is definitely because they always were keeping in line with the thing Doctor Who always did best, making the ordinary extraordinary. And let's face it, something as common as shop window dummies or mannequins coming alive and finding out they're an alien menace, and then segueing into your job getting blown up, that's pure Doctor Who right there. Oh, Mickey the idiot. Now, if there's anything, oh, and here comes Camille Kadori. Camille Kadori, funny enough, that was an actress I did know about. A lot of people know her from Nuns on the Run. I actually know her and love her from King Ralph, film with John Goodman, that came out somewhere in the early to mid '90s. Wonderful film. I mean, not great, but it actually even has a lot of heart to it. I think, and she was like the romantic lead opposite John Goodman, and you could tell they had good chemistry. Name dropping, but when I met Camille Kadori at Gallifrey One, I even talked to her about King Ralph, and she had nothing but wonderful things to say about the making of that movie and also about John Goodman. So, just goes to show, some people are the what you think they are. Mhm. I have the same question a lot of people do have. Why did Rose bring that arm home? I suppose it's like when you're, dealing with the adrenaline of running home and you're just like, especially running home after you were just in there, after you nearly died, and oh, the place got blown up. I suppose you don't think about what you're carrying home with you, and then when you're home, you're like, oh, I forgot I brought that along with me. uh, and credit to the sound guy, they were able to make creaking plastic sound terrifying or foreboding. And this is a great juxtaposition compared to the beginning, where you see Rose go through her routine, but then the Doctor enters the world, and now her routine's completely crazy because now she doesn't have a job, and she's still dealing with the fact that, oh yeah, I saw some weird stuff with some guy who, is talking about aliens and stuff. Is it me, or do I actually kind of want to see the scene of when that incident happened? I'd just be intrigued to find out if that guy's frame of reference was my big fat Greek wedding. Mm. Now, I'm going to have things to say about Rose down the line because I kind of maintain. Oh, this scene brought to you by Stay Well Cat Flaps. Um, Again, quintessential Doctor Who, super hyper intelligent alien time traveling through time and space. We see him poking his head through a cat flap. Yeah. So, lost my train of thought. Okay, this is the first of many wonderful scenes with the Doctor and Jackie Tyler. Now, Jackie Tyler, caught a lot of ire from fans, like especially during the RTD era. Like a lot of people didn't like her. Honestly, I of course loved her because of Camille Kadori, but honestly, I call it bad, but every now and then she kind of reminds me of a humanoid Miss Piggy. She's like very confident, in herself, very affectionate, wants attention. I don't know, bad analogy, but I don't know, it kind of works for me. But okay, this moment right here. Okay, compared to what I was used to in the history of Doctor Who, I never ever thought I'd ever hear the Doctor quipping about the fact that a celebrity marriage and that it's not going to last because one of them's gay and the other one's an alien. That was something I had never been used to at all, and that was a major hint to me that Doctor Who was indeed moving forward. That it wasn't just going to bank on nostalgia. That it was going to move forward with the trends and the way television was being made at the time. And yet, somehow, some way, it still quintessentially felt like Doctor Who, especially when you got him looking, well, admittedly, when you got this scene with him fighting a mannequin hand, because it's the kind of theatrics that you would remember from the classic series. And I gotta say, I do love Rose in this, where she's still going along, asking him all the questions, just brushing this off as if it was nothing. Because, yeah, you still can't, even if you've seen Windows coming alive and attacking, you still wouldn't believe that the arm would be attacking. Why are you drying your hair? It's already dry. How could you not hear the table break? And also, ouch. And they brought back the sonic screwdriver too. Sonic Screwdriver had not been seen actively in Doctor Who since the Fifth Doctor era, and made a brief appearance in the TV movie, but not a big appearance. So it was cool to see that again, and also it's a nice one. I definitely say I'm a biggest fan of Capaldi's, but again I'm biased. Okay, this shot coming up. This is another thing I would definitely say is proof that they were definitely looking at taking Doctor Who a step further in what you can do with production. This whole bit is done in one single shot. Now, a lot of times in television, they will do this economically just to save time because, yeah, if your actors are on point and they can get all their lines out and still deliver a good performance and be able to pull this off in one shot, that saves a lot of time. But even then, it's a big, arduous task. I mean, that's why it definitely pays to have actors with stage experience who can be able to pull off a lot of dialogue in one fell swoop. But I gotta say, this is still very impressive that they're able to drop a lot of exposition, do some pretty complicated, dialogue, worthy of classic Who with all that gobbledygook, as Sylvester McCoy always used to say, and still be able to pull off the technical demands of this shot. I'm honestly seriously impressed. Mm. And again, it was an important scene for us to help get to know Eccleston's doctor, and again, it's a great scene. Just love it. And Eccleston, he's always been termed as kind of like one of the darker doctors, more intense. But I gotta say, he handles the whimsy especially well. It never comes off as tone deaf or erratic or anything like that. This is a fun scene, and he's delivering the fun. And a lot of people don't give him that credit, especially with retrospect. And I gotta admit, it does kind of drive me crazy how people say just start with Tennant. I'm like, no, you start with Eccleston. Thank you very much. That's where it starts, so that's where it should always. That's where you should go. Mm. Again, going back to that leather jacket, it was so jarring to see a doctor dressed up like that. And when I saw the behind the scenes photos, I thought that he wasn't in costume yet. And then I saw the promo shots, and boom, leather jacket. It was just strange to me. But now, I don't know if it's maybe because I got used to it or just because of the fashion trends of the doctors that came after. But I look at this and I'm like, I just couldn't picture Eccleston wearing anything else. This just looks right for him. And again, I admit bias because I own that jacket because Lynn got it for me as a birthday present, and I still wear it to this very day. It's a very comfy jacket. And I got to admit, when you wear it, it does give you that Eccleston swagger. Oh, here we go. Now, I always say with every doctor, especially if it's your first time seeing them, there's always got to be that one moment that sells you on how they are, or that sells you on them as the doctor. If you're not on board after this monologue, I have pity for you. And also it also was important because it also put you on board with Russell T Davies and his vision for the show. And this is the monologue, I will say, that tells you he not only gets the fun of the show, but also the epicness. And while I do prefer Stephen Moffat, as far as best showrunner of the new series, the one thing I gotta give to Russell T Davies, one thing he's always been especially good at during his run, is bringing out the emotions of the scene. Even if his writing is standard, even if the story is predictable, the one thing he's always good at doing is bringing out the emotions, not just in the writing, but somehow the writing clicks with the actors, and the actors are able to convey said emotions. And you either just really get swept up in the epicness of the situation, or the sadness, the happiness. But I admit he always was good at bringing out bringing the happy tears and the sad tears out of me. So I will give this to Russell T Davies. He was exactly the right writer that the show needed at the right time, especially when it came to appealing to a new audience and trying to get them on board. And I suppose another major factor in that endeavor is getting Billie Piper on board. Now, one of the benefits of being American is that you do tend to be oblivious to who's popular in certain parts of the world. And Billie Piper was dominantly popular in Britain as a singer. And I know that when she got cast, some people weren't happy about that prospect. And it's understandable because I suppose Billie Piper getting cast in a show like Doctor Who, and with Doctor Who fans eager for its comeback, finding this out, I guess it would be like if I found out Britney Spears got cast in Ghostbusters. I suppose I'd have that same reaction. So it was kind of strange. I mean, I will say, Billie Piper was. I actually took the time to go back and listen to some of her music. Compared to other pop stars, hers was pretty decent. Uh, that being said, I'm really glad she moved on to acting, because I will say she's incredible. Penny Dreadful aside, I thought she was incredible in Secret Diary of a Call Girl. Oh, jeez. Funny thing to keep in mind about this episode versus where we are now with Doctor Who, it's been 15 years. And even then, this was in production back in 2004. So we got to bear in mind, she could be doing all this on her phone and not even need to go to Mickey's place. She could do it on her phone. Yeah. So, oh man, it's just hilarious that you even look back at this point and you're like, oh man, the times really have changed even from this point. Okay, here's a continuity issue. I don't know if they never really address it. Mickey in this episode has a yellow bug, and about a year later in the finale, when she's helping Rose with the Tardis console, he's towing it with Mini Cooper, and they never explain that. I mean, this car never got destroyed or anything like that. I don't know if he wrecked it. Again, I'll put the caption down there to indicate who this actor is, but this actor is utterly wonderful. I actually just recently saw him in Anna and the Apocalypse, and he played Anna's father, and he was utterly wonderful and definitely gave a memorable performance in that. And again, and one note to Russell Davies for cliche skewing, normally a character like this would be like one of those guys like with a nasty house and all that, but I love the fact that he actually has a normal wife, and a kid, and actually keeps things rather clean and very tidy. And also, this scene works extremely well. In a way, I wonder, if I ever meet Russell Davies, I'd love to ask him if this scene was kind of designed to help usher in the newbies, to almost like the character Clive here is kind of designed to be representative of the classic series fans, trying to usher in the new generation to introduce them to the idea of the Doctor. If that's the case, well played. I also found out in early, I don't know if it was early drafts of the script or even early in pre-production, that they were talking about getting pictures of all the classic Doctors prior to this to show off, but I think they put the kibosh on that principally because that would have been way too much. That would have been people going like, whoa, what's the deal here? What's going on? So they kept it strictly focused on just the Ninth Doctor. And again, very smart move. Yeah, see, there he is, all posh and period appropriate. It just doesn't look right. Maybe he needs a wig. But again, that would ruin the charm. So someone decided to... So on the night Krakatoa exploded, the Doctor took the time to get a portrait taken. Well, he knows better. I mean, all the things they did prior to Pompeii. Well, sure, if you're looking at it from that perspective, it looks like that. Now, we got to take the time to talk about Noel Clarke as Mickey. If there's any character in the Russell T Davies era who I actually would say has a strong developmental arc, I would say Mickey's definitely one of the shining examples. Because in the beginning, yeah, he's kind of cowardly. He's, got the spine of a tube worm. Pretty much always gets in trouble, and then by the very end becomes like a hardcore badass. So, and it's not weird. It doesn't feel like, oh, well, that just came out of the blue. No, you can actually buy that he seriously got toughened up and actually became pretty solid when it came to alien fighting. And again, credit to Davies for being able to pull off writing such a drastically different character arc. And of course, definitely credit to Noel Clarke for selling it on both angles. Now, again, this is one of those wonderful things that Doctor Who does, going back to the principle of making the ordinary extraordinary. And again, why making the Nestine Consciousness the first monster of the show is, again, a very smart move, because we're taking recognizable objects that we see every day, and they're doing wacky things in order to make them sinister or interesting. I'm first to admit these effects have not aged well. But again, based on what we were used to, what me as a classic Who fan, based on what I was used to, and remember, I jumped on in the mid '90s, so I was used to CGI. Even compared to all the things I was used to when I was binging the classic series, this was still amazing that Doctor Who had these special effects. And and again, you'd think it'd be weird that that a reputable sci-fi show would have a belch joke, but again, Doctor Who had that sense of fun to it. And also, the one thing about a belch as a device, it usually indicates that a person gets eaten and you're not seeing them again. So that's a thing to put the audience on the wrong foot. Okay, Rose, you're looking directly at him. His complexion has changed and his features are oddly clean, especially his hairline, and you're not noticing this? I know he's been out in the car for a while, but last I checked, it was actually pretty cold out there. So, do you really just not pay attention to him? And they left a particular plot thread hanging. Did they settle for Chinese or pizza? That's 15 years, and that still, like, bugs me. I'll never get that answer. Never. Or who Jimmy Stones is. Mm. Okay, and also note to the nesting consciousness, improve your tactics of interrogation. Okay, that was a gif waiting to happen right there, that face. What tipped you off? The army of plastic people tried to kill you, the explosion, or the arm that tried to kill you in your house? Ah, the Nestines also have a power of editing. Wacky thing is, I guess I'm not very eagle-eyed because I should have realized that was the Doctor, but I actually didn't think about that because I was caught up in what was going on here. Mm. You know what? The Doctor has been known to save the universe with an umbrella. It's not far off that he'd fight a Nestine with a champagne cork. Oh man, that hand. Imagine all the walls he could spackle with that. And that is actually a pretty decent disembodied head effect. Oh, that was a sensitive alarm. She barely broke it. I wanted more breadsticks! More breadsticks! Ah, conveniently, this restaurant has a door that was built to resist nuclear bombs. Maybe Indiana Jones should use that. See. Now, I remember there was talk. Now, I think I remember correctly, there was talk of changing the TARDIS into something else. But again, Russell T Davies said, no, that's an icon. You do not change that. That's one of the quintessential things of Doctor Who. I mean, you don't change the Millennium Falcon. You don't change Serenity. You don't change Ecto One. You make it. This is perfect. It's beautiful. And I love that they still take the time to do this. And again, this also works because for classic series fans, it's a tease because we know what's in there, but we just haven't seen what it looks like in there yet. Ah, and I love that shot. That is great editing right there. But just the idea that we're seeing a shot of them walking through the doors of the police box and then boom, they're in there. Never seen that before. So this TARDIS interior, I definitely say I definitely prefer a lot of the ones that have come after this one, but I gotta say, I love the idea of this one. I love the coral aesthetic. I like the idea that it feels alive. Just the idea that it has kind of an organic structure, and of course the fact that later on they did say that yes, TARDISes were grown, which given the fact that the TARDIS is a living breathing being, as many new series fans would find out in The Doctor's Wife, and as classic series fans knew, this design does actually hold up to that concept. So, definite solid move on that one. I'll still maintain Paul McGann's is my favorite, and I'm not just saying that because that was my first Tardis interior. That one just looked comfortable. It looked like he could live in that thing. If you had to ask me what some of the other ones I love, I'd say I actually loved Matt Smith's first one, and I'll explain that when we get to that one later. Yeah, I still love that sound. And again, you don't get rid of that sound. That's a classic sound. And even better, because the audience, first time they've seen this thing, first time they've encountered it, they were on the inside looking in. So new series, for people jumping in on this, they're walking out and we're somewhere else now, and all he says is disappears here, reappears there. They don't know what that looks like from the outside, so they're still teasing us with little things as it goes on. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, when I jumped onto Doctor Who, one of the major things I liked about him as a character is that he doesn't approach people the way most other sci-fi heroes do. I mean, the Doctor's much more, of course, eccentric is the key word that's always been used to describe him, but other factors is is that he doesn't, many times, depending on which incarnation, he lacks social graces, and he a lot of times will just jump to the task at hand and not think about people's feelings, and a lot of times, the best companions tend to, say, "Hey, Doctor, you might want to dial that back." I think it's another reason why I love Capaldi so much. That right there is pretty much the one thing that people complain about with the Russell T Davies era, and I not just Russell T Davies, but even just the new series in general. One of the major problems when they changed the format to 45 minutes episodes with like just one episode per story, unfortunately, that doesn't leave a lot of room to help set up the resolution. So a lot of times they just pull stuff like anti-plastic out of their butts, just to come up with some kind of resolution. Because one of the great things about the classic series is that because a lot of it was in the serialized format, they were able to gradually lead to a resolution, and have the Doctor actually work to come up with some kind of way to solve the problem. Whereas here, he just pulls out a bottle of anti-plastic, and that is the thing that saves the day. And it's like, And I can't justify it. Sometimes it's clear sometimes the writers are much more interesting with the nature of the conflict and less about the resolution. But then again, fortunately, a character like the Doctor has been known to pull answers out of thin air. So it's not weird, but sometimes in order to make the resolution, or the big win for the heroes feel much more triumphant, you got to feel like they've struggled a bit, and dumping in a bottle of anti-plastic doesn't really do that. Fortunately, this episode does something a little bit different. Now, one thing I have to tell, definitely good thing to talk about, is that apparently Christopher Eccleston, well, firstly, I know that he was going through some issues during the production of this, not relating to the issue of the whatever was going on in the making of the show, but apparently he was going through some personal issues around this point. But that, combined with the fact that he was also having disagreements with the production crew as far as how the show is made, and yet, despite all that, somehow, someway, it turns out an incredible performance, one that opened him up to a brand new generation. And yeah, one can even say that it was his performance here that got him a lot of gigs down the line. So it's kind of cool that even despite all that, he still delivers on on the promise of his performance. And I always kind of respect any actors able to still, despite either personal issues or issues they have with the way things are run, and they're still able to deliver a performance with the utmost conviction. That says a lot. And I got to give a lot of praise to Eccleston. And I know he spent a lot of times distancing himself from the show in the years since, and it does make me happy to know that he has since started to come back and actually embrace it. That does my heart good to know. I admit this was a bit weird to see Mickey still alive again because Nestines usually, I mean, they have copied people in the past, but normally when they do that, the originals usually tends to be good and dead. So this was odd. That was a bit odd. I was like, normally Zygons do the keeping them alive thing, but not in this case. So it was just weird that the Nestines did that. But again, doing that, killing him would have meant, no more awesome future Mickey. Doctor, don't say shunting when you're looking at an amorphous substance. I just watched the movie Society. And that shunting scene is still in my brain. Mm. Yeah, we're capable of so much more, but ninja Nestines. They snuck up on him even with the creaking plastic. Mm. I always love to see scenes preceding when they do the sneak up. It's like, did they set them there like minutes beforehand, or did they just? I don't know. I don't know. So many things I'd love to hear about. And also, I'm impressed that they found the time to get the Tardis there. I mean, they were only like away from it for like 5 minutes, and it was across the Thames. Mm. Now, this was a cool thing right here, and a good thing you do in a season premiere. You give them just enough to intrigue them. You get allusions to the Time War, and even then, they don't call it the Time War. They just say the war. So you're making people go, whoa, 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 what war are we talking about? Which, for new series fans, they're going, wait a minute, what war are we talking about? And the classic series fans, they don't know about this war either because where we left them, the Time Lords were hale and hearty and just as corrupt as ever, so they don't know about this war. It was that nice little thing to get people to lull them back into a state of into a state of intrigue. Mm. And again, been 15 years since this one first aired. I'm still gonna say it. It still looks great, and as a classic series fan, first time seeing this, I was like, yeah, we never had production value like this back when it kicked off. So I'm just grateful we got what we got. Now a cool thing. Most people of the classic series, they always their memory cheats in this one regard. They always think that the Autons busted through the windows in Spearhead from Space, when in reality it was just an edit. You just heard the sound of glass breaking, and then they're out and they're starting to attack people. But in reality, it was just an editing trick. You never actually saw that. So they actually deliberately staged this scene so we could finally see that for the first time. This hurts. You killed Clive. Oh man, I actually would have loved it if he had stayed alive and became a recurring character. He could have been Doctor Who's answer to Clive to Murray from Stranger Things. It would have been fun to have that conspiracy nut character find out that everything he said was vindicated, and like beyond just this happened. And an additional thing I love is the fact they actually kept the sound effects from the classic series, because I always thought that was a cool gun sound. And yeah, if you remember what I said about mannequins in the past, this is my nightmare come to life. Mm. Now all this was filmed out in Cardiff. I mean, of course, all my friends across the pond would know this very well. Um, I've only been to London. I only went to London for a full week in 2000, so I didn't see every angle of the city. So I didn't. So for all I knew, this was all still London. But they made a big deal about the fact they were shooting in Cardiff. Mm. Jackie Tyler, we're the ghosts of marriages past. Mm. And also, first little utterance of the word Time Lord, but it's muffled enough that if you didn't catch it, mm. Now, of course, we got a good hero moment for Rose. Now, yeah, because the common instinct a lot of people is to run, save yourself type deal. This is a big, this is of course the big moment for Rose. Just the major fact that she's willing to take a risk and bank on pretty much the one of the few things that she only gives herself credit to know is that, oh yeah, I'm actually pretty good at gymnastics. Though I gotta say the editing's a bit weird here. Pretty much by this point, Jackie would be dead. Right here is like, yeah, they would have already emptied out their clips into her if they have clips. But again, just for dramatic effect, you just kind of have to let it happen, and just assume that everything that just occurred takes place within the span of only a couple split seconds. I don't know. You just accept it. You just accept it because it is a great moment. It's a quintessential Rose moment. And once again, we were always used to models blowing up and all that. So this is a pretty big, everything we're seeing here is just way bigger than what classic series fans were used to. And add on to it with, really good camera work and really good lighting that didn't make it look stagey at all. Even this scene, even though this may have been on studio, I don't know, if it's a studio, it's a big studio. Even this doesn't feel stagey like it used to back then. So I don't know. Maybe it's just the fact that we were so used to something in being done in one way for so long. Everything else, for us classic series fans seeing it for the first time, we just felt spoiled. We just felt so spoiled by the fact that the show looks so good. And that we were getting big explosions and stuff like that, and it didn't look like a model. London's first outbreak of the safety dance ended in disaster. And yet this didn't traumatize her from shopping ever again. Okay, we gotta take this into account. The next time that any of them see Rose, it's a year later, and Rose only calls her like twice. Once for this moment where she doesn't say anything, and the other one just asking about, asking her what day it is, and then doesn't see her again for another year. This is another cool thing that classic series fans never expected to see, because in the classic series, whenever they exit the TARDIS, they always angle it so you can't see inside. But here, all of a sudden, here's a doctor standing casually in the doorway of the TARDIS, and we're seeing the interior in the background. We had never seen that before, and that was the coolest thing. I mean, even though nowadays with HD, you can tell he's standing in front of a green screen, you don't care. Because, again, we'd never seen that before, and it's so cool. Mm. You can see his face. Again, that one thing Eccleston's always been good at is nonverbal acting, and you can see how saddened he is by that. And again, another effect that just looks incredible. Admittedly, though, that's kind of how it looked in the TV movie too. But even then, it's just still a much more improved effect. But of course, anyone knows this. There's a TV series, and she's coming on board. He's coming back. Of course, normally you expect him to come back maybe a week down the line, but nope, coming on back. Mm. And again, for new series fans, they'd be like, "What?" Or for new, people jumping in, yeah. And there's a decision that's going to bite Rose in the ass. Again, more on that later on down the line. Okay, so this was Rose, the first episode of the new series, and even back when I first saw this, and actually I had to see it by way of a Region 2 DVD, which I had to play on a DVD-ROM because you had to change the region code. And even then, I didn't see it until like a good year after it initially aired because it wasn't airing in America at the time. So suffice to say, this classic series fan was absolutely overjoyed that the show was back and that it was legitimately great. And the fact that you could tell that the people involved were actually caring about making a great show and reminding people that this was a wonderful license. And and again, it's because this was so good. That's why I'm here now, 15 years later, talking about it. So if you guys enjoyed this commentary, just leave a comments below, and maybe maybe more will come in the future. More Doctor Who episodes, maybe even some other stuff like movies that I love. I don't know, whatever you'd like to hear. Leave it in the comments below, and I will, see if we can set some up in the future. But in the meantime, for more addictive content on Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click. Thou shalt be served.